Our next speaker is Jeffrey Yaskin. Jeffrey is a software engineer at Google. Since 2005, he's worked on the web search front-end, testing, multi-threading, Python optimization, and the Chrome extension system. He led the migration to C++11 at Google and chaired the library evolution working group at the ISO C++ committee. Since 2014, he's worked on the Chrome web platform, leading the development of Web Bluetooth, web packaging, and a new privacy threat model for the web. Now, I'm really excited to have Jeff over here because for anyone who is kind of keeping a close eagle eye on the world of ad blocking, you might know that the whole topic of web bundles and web packaging is sort of having a lot of debate, a lot of concern sometimes as well. So that's why I wanted Jeff, who is one of the editors of the spec, to come on and talk about web packaging and how this will affect ad blocking. So over to you, Jeff.
Hi. So as Shwetang said, I'm Jeffrey Yaskin. I'm working on web packaging, and he asked me to explain it and make sure that lines of communication are open, given the controversy around it. So to start out, what is web packaging? It's a way to combine several HTTP resources into a single file, so that we can transfer them either over the web or between peers as a single unit. Optionally, it's possible to sign the content so that whoever gets it can tell that it's the real content from wherever it claims it came from. This is not complete. The kind of what I described above is the vision. The parts that are actually being implemented and shipping, which is a single resource, which several Chrome browsers have shipped. And then we're actively getting single origin bundles to origin trial. So these are unsigned packages where resources are named by URLs, but you don't get a signature to show that it's authentic. Let's see. So why bother with this? It helps. The kind of original goal was to help users who have limited internet, either expensive or flaky or slow, to share web applications. They can already do this with native applications, at least on Android. They can share the APIs around, but there's no way to do it for web applications. Second, this fixes AMP's URL problem. So AMP isn't that relevant to content blocking. Search wanted to be able to prefetch search results, but only tell content authors about the prefetch if the user has consented by actually clicking on the result. And that made them proxy the request, which gave it the wrong URL. And with signed exchanges, that first shipping part, it proves to the browser the content's authentic, and that lets the browser show the right URL in the URL bar. And third, web packages, even the unsigned sort, can help us optimize web page sub-resource loading. So you can, instead of compiling all of your JavaScript into one kind of opaque JavaScript file, you could package all of the separate modules into a bundle, which the browser can understand the pieces of. And that will probably improve caching, improves the ability to represent images and CSS. And so we haven't completely validated it yet, but should make everything fast. So what's to blockers here? The main concern that I've heard was that what happens if the package lies about what's inside it. So you might have one package that represents a web page, and it says good.js renders content and evil.js mines Bitcoin. And so the content blockers will block evil.js and everyone will be happy. If the website is trying to confuse the content blocker, though, they might have a second page that says evil.js renders the content and good.js mines Bitcoin. And then the content blocker can't just say, like, block evil.js, because then they break one of the pages. So in general, blockers can fix this by blocking the full qualified name. Instead of blocking evil.js, they block page 1 $evil.js and page 2 $good.js. what the fully qualified will look like. There's discussion on an IETF mailing list about kind of what we should do there. But once we've figured it out, it'll be exposed at least through declarative net request in Chrome extension API, possibly elsewhere. So for honest packages, you just, let's see, we'll expose all of the bundles URL, the claimed URL, this like good.js or evil.js, and the fully qualified thing to extensions. And so if the package is honest, you can block the claimed URL and everything will work. If the package is dishonest, you can block the fully qualified URL. We're working toward the bundle origin trial, and this probably won't be available right at the beginning, but it will definitely be available sometime during the origin trial. Then we have to wonder, like, how often is this likely to happen? It's going to be expensive to write filter rules for every possible bundle. So if it happened a lot, it's a problem. But we think that this is likely to happen about as often as people do the same kind of thing with paths. So if a page is trying to circumvent ad blockers or content blockers, it can randomize URLs, as the previous talk discussed. And that's difficult because they have to update all of the source links. And they can't do it at all for third-party ads because you can't, or it's at least very hard to move the auction URL local. And you certainly can't put the auction URL into a bundle because as the previous talk mentioned, it's also already possible to inline first-party resources into the page itself, which is pretty similar and probably a little harder to block than bundled resources. And finally, we're working on integrating this into browsers in a way that assumes that the bundles are honest, that the URLs can actually be fetched directly. And so lying in a bundle probably breaks other pages. We haven't entirely figured out how it will break other pages, but it'll interfere. It's likely to interfere with their caching. The second risk, which I think is more real, is pages will accidentally de-optimize things that content blockers had been able to optimize. So a page author just kind of in the course of things is likely to bundle the set of that are most in use and that their intended rendering is going to fetch. If a content blocker is trying to say block all images or block all JavaScript, it's not going to work the same if the page has bundled the images or JavaScript with the top level HTML. And so we've got a couple ideas that will make that less of a problem, although it's not going to. It requires kind of the server to cooperate. So we're designing a way for servers to avoid sending already cached content that's in the bundle. So if you've got a top-level page that uses, say, a font, like a font that's hosted on your server, and you include that in the bundle, we don't want to send it for kind of once the user has already cached that font. And so if you stick for the bundle, if you stick the list of resources that are in the bundle, the browser will be able to send up to the server, hey, I already have these, and the server can subset the bundle that they send back. And that technique should work for content blockers. So the content blocker would look at the list of resources and say, I already have these resources, if it doesn't actually have them, and that would prevent them from being transferred in a way that kind of is indistinguishable from users who aren't using content blockers. We're not sure if the list of resources should include the destinations. So the system I described above would require the content blocker to have a list of URLs to filter, rather than filtering by, like, I don't want any images or any script. And so we're wonder if this should describe what's called the fetch destination in the web standards to describe the kind of resource so that a content blocker could filter all of the particular kind. And then maybe we should also tell the server, like let the content blocker tell the server what to filter. That requires the server to explicitly cooperate with content blocking, which is not unreasonable if the server is trying to cooperate with users with kind of expensive bandwidth. But it also is less likely to get high adoption. So we're really open to input. Want to hear what this community thinks we ought to do in order to kind of make things keep working as much as possible. None of this will actually help truly static servers that can't subset their bundles. So we're going to lose some functionality. It's for at least to browser to pretend not to support bundles at all, since this is so far only Chromium is starting to implement this. But we should keep thinking about what to do to avoid breaking people and avoid using extra bandwidth. And so I wanted to leave kind of as much time as possible for discussion and questions, since I'm sure I haven't covered everything everyone's concerned about. So what are the questions?
Great. So yes, let's dive straight into a few questions. One question that was raised by David Oakley: if the auction happens server side, and then the website serves the ads as a first-party resource, how do you block that?
Yeah, so if the auction happens, say, on the first party, as maybe part of the request, the ads into the top level bundle, I think you can't block it. In the same way that you can't block it if they insert randomized URLs in that top level resource and kind of dynamically generate the content of the ads. If they do anything easier for the server operator, if they make any request out to a third-party server or have a sort of consistent path on the first-party server, then block what it does today. Yeah.
Okay. Question number 2. Can bundle sites require not bundled content? CDN, third-party, external resources of any kind as an example. If that's the case, would requests be interesting?
Yeah, so a bundle is not for offline use. It would have to be like if you're building a site for people to share it offline, then the bundle has to include everything. But for most web pages, we wouldn't expect the whole thing to be included in the top level bundle. Kind of the easiest thing to do is actually to have a normal web page, like you serve a link to the HTML file, and you have a link rel equals something like preload to point at the bundle of most of the sub resources. And then that top level resource would link out to other resources just like any other site. Even if your top level page is inside the bundle, even if you kind of serve the bundle as the main HTML file effectively, links inside it will default to landing inside the bundle for content that's authoritative, but anything that's not in the bundle would go out to the network, and then just the ability to filter those requests as they do for any other page.
Okay, and maybe like this question is kind of already answered by you, but maybe it might be worth a shot once again, which is how do web bundles play with highly dynamic server-side generated content?
So I think it'll depend on kind of in what way it's dynamic. There's a constraint in the current format that when you start sending a bundle, you know the sizes of everything inside it. So if your content is dynamic enough that you don't know that up front, then you would want to kind of have your top level bundle point to other URLs, point to URLs outside the bundle, and make that reply with dynamic. There's some discussion at on the IETF list about extending the format to allow more dynamic responses. So you would do something like HTTP2's push promises as a later part of the bundle to say basically like, here are some responses, and now here are some more URLs that are going to be included in the bundle, and then here are the responses for those. We don't know exactly. There wasn't a lot of support for that when we brought it up last, but it could come back if there's a lot of interest.
Okay. Okay, so there's another question, and the answer could be something that maybe we can talk about right now, or maybe you can also talk about it in the chat. But there's one question which is basically from Gary posted: if you can't block an ad, Google is effectively allowing and advocating for forcing ads on other services into Adblock users. Is that correct? And is that Google's position? So
no, we don't think that this will prevent ad blocking from working any more than people can already circumvent ads. This, as far as I've been able to tell, doesn't give any extra tools that people didn't already have. As the previous talk discussed, like, there are lots of ways to circumvent ad blockers today. And I haven't been able to find a way that bundling makes it easier. If people can explain a way that it makes it easier, we will try to fix that and make it just as hard to circumvent ad blockers as it is today.
Yeah, I guess some people might be saying that technically speaking, in terms of like the actual ways in which ad blockers might get circumvented, that doesn't really change. But the way in which it makes it easier is not in terms of like anything new as such, but it's just access to this technique and access to a way of actually doing it. Whereas like you really had to know your stuff to do it earlier. So like just broadening access in that way. But that's a discussion that probably needs a little bit more voices. There's one more question that that's there from Andrea. What's the service worker role in this new bundled idea? PWAs are being promoted a lot, but would service workers still work as expected within bundles?
Yeah, so you can serve the service worker inside a bundle. Bundle requests go through any existing service worker. There's some we worked out how third-party kind of signed things go through kind of both service workers. There's the server for the bundle, and then the service worker for that had signed the content, and it'll go through, for signed things, it'll go through both of them. But for kind of simple same origin bundles, which is kind of what we're focusing on trying to ship soon, it should just go through the service worker of the original origin, and work approximately how you would expect.
Okay, there's also another question from David Oakley. Do all ad blockers need to extend their code to be aware of bundles?
I think initially things should keep working until people start actually trying to circumvent using bundles. If people start trying to lie about what's inside the bundles, then it's likely that blockers. So I think that the URL patterns, that you'll just use kind of longer filter patterns. You'll name both the bundle and the thing inside it. The caret separator that's in declarative net request should keep working to separate those two in the same way that you might, like if someone is proxying another site through their own domain, you might need to filter a domain you all think of the name inside the bundle as just part of the path. And so I'm hoping that at least the code changes to blockers will be minimal. But I do think you'll need to think about it at some point and figure out kind of both watch what people are doing and figure out exactly the right way to respond.
Yeah, and that kind of one more question that I had personally was in terms of like the future timeline, in terms of how or when would this be there in terms of like fully featured in production Chrome, not just in beta, but like there in just normal Chrome. And then the second thing is, do you have any idea of adoption on this beyond just Chrome? Is it also going to be there in other browsers as well? Do you have an idea over there?
So we certainly hope it'll be adopted by browsers. Nobody has, neither Firefox nor Safari has said they're definitely going to do it. I'm working with a couple people who are from both Ember and the JavaScript Standards Committee, who are looking at kind of a way to describe the single origin bundle idea, which helps us improve preloading and sub-resource loading, as something that we hope Firefox and WebKit will be happy with. You asked about timelines. It's going to be so the code hasn't landed yet to turn on any origin trials in Chrome. So it's a couple months before an origin trial would get stable, and then at least 3 releases from then before it would be turned on by default. So you have maybe closer to most of a year before this is actually live.
Okay, there's another question, which is, as the service worker can intercept most requests and decide what to serve, would it be possible to intercept service worker fetch requests?
I believe that the extensions API can already intercept the fetch requests from service worker, and that should keep working with or without bundles. Basically, we're trying to make bundle contents look like any other request. They have basically an extra URL. The fully qualified URL is additional. Well, either the fully qualified URL or the claimed URL is additional. But we expose all of the extensions to let people block whatever they want.
Okay, another question is there any mechanism to ensure that sites continue to make content available in a non-bundled format?
Right. Initially, it's that it's not adopted everywhere. In the long run, I think the caching mechanisms are the most kind of the best leverage for encouraging sites to keep responding to direct requests for these things, for the claimed URLs. So we haven't totally figured out how bundle content affects the cache. If things in the bundle wind up in the HTTP cache, then when a browser sees a request that it could get that one resource is not in its cache, maybe it could do direct requests. But I think none of this is fully fleshed out yet. And in the long run, it's definitely possible that we'll wind up in a place where servers decide not to accept the direct requests for things that they know are in bundles, especially like for ES modules, you might have a couple thousand modules bundled up into one bundle, and they might decide that fetching a single one of those is not a reasonable thing to support. But we're also looking at writing extensions for servers to kind of let you host just a bundle on the server, and then it could translate that into being able to serve the stuff inside the bundle, which would make it easier to to keep.
Okay. And then there's one more question by David Oakley. Have you done any performance tests to assess the difference in load time and network usage with and without bundles?
I don't have the results in front of me. We've done a little bit of testing, and right now it's showing kind of approximately on par. But again, I don't have that in front of me, and I think we're going to be as the implementation progresses, we will get better numbers, more optimized numbers, and that will be, I think, an essential part of convincing Firefox and WebKit to do this. Also, we have to show that it's actually faster.
Okay, and then there's one more question. Have U.S. regulators been briefed on this?
That's the kind of question that I just.
Jeff, I think you broke up. Can you?
Oh, sorry. I am not a lawyer, so I can't really answer legal questions.
Yeah, I think maybe it's worth a chat, Gary. If you're in the Slack, then you can have a greater chat with Jeff, and he can maybe explain a little bit better. So we don't have that much time. So one more question from my side would be, now that you've had a little bit more of a feedback and discussion with the community, I want this discussion to continue. And with this, I would just like you to mention where can we continue this discussion. Is it on the GitHub repo? Is there anywhere else that we can have a question and answer, or send our technical feedback and suggest improvements, maybe even? So where would you suggest?
Right. So the GitHub repository is probably the best place. Issues there are the best place. There's a list, wpack@ietf.org, that has kind of more general discussion. Although questions specific to browsers are less on topic there. I don't have a particular place for the integration with the extensions API. It probably makes sense to file issues on the GitHub repository for that also, kind of trying to figure out what we should say about integration with extensions.
Okay, with this, I think we're pretty much out of time, but we'll also continue this discussion during the rest of the event on the Slack. Maybe we can also link to the GitHub repo over there so that people can check it out. And thanks so much, Jeff, for spending your time with us and explaining the specification in detail, and also having a discussion with the community. So thanks, and see you around.
Yep. Thanks for the chat. I'll be on Slack.